Hi there, folks. My name's NovaWing24, and welcome to another interview here at Flight Sim Expo. And this interview, I am joined here by the team from Evenex. So welcome to Colin and Fabio. Welcome once again after our entertaining interview last year with many unexpected additional guests walking through. So we are back here once again, folks, at the Flight Sim Expo media booth this year. So huge shout out to Evan and the team for giving us content creators this space, by the way. Anyway, we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the news that just broke a few hours ago, thanks to Evenex here. Of course, we finally have a release date for the long-awaited MD-11.
Yes.
And of course, that is, just in case you've been under a rock,
July 2nd, 2024.
right, so the long-awaited. So how I guess before we get into that, the relief you must feel about announcing a release date, how has that journey been to get to this point where you can actually say, it is coming out on this day?
Rock climbing with a 50-pound backpack.
Only 50?
I'm being generous.
Sometimes it's a little bit heavier, but it is such a relief to be able to finally say, after all the work with QA testers, with our collector's edition members, to be able to finally say, here's a date that everyone can enjoy it.
That is awesome. And what, for those of us who aren't normally tube-liner flyers, what is that, what does this mean to Evenex? What does this mean to the community? What are you bringing to the flight sim community with your rendition of the MD-11?
We wanted to bring a plane that you can sit there with the manual and go step by step. If you're reading the FCOM and you say, oh, I turn this light off and push this button, then this will flash and that system will fail. Ours does this. We wanted to build a plane that you could reliably go gate to gate, make sure you follow all the procedures, every light comes on, everything does exactly what you're expecting, and it feels like home. And that's like Fabio was saying with the QA testers. We've had pilots on our team, and we have worked with them to finally we've achieved that. They feel at home. They're telling me, yep, it does exactly what I expected it to do. Feels like the plane I used to fly. That's what we want to bring. We want to bring what it felt like to fly the MD-11 to the sim.
That feels like, and that feels like something to have a real world pilot say that for an aircraft as iconic as the MD-11 is, to say that, hey, this is what I flew. This is exactly how I remember it. That must be a pretty impressive feeling.
We were all high-fiving each other. Every time we see that, we're like, yes, because that's exactly what we want. I don't want close enough, and we've been working with them, and it's very gratifying and very humbling to see that kind of feedback. I'm really excited about it.
So I guess that leads me to a sort of a secondary sort of thought and a question. So obviously, for those who are who love their manuals, who love their their real ops, simulating their real ops, this aircraft sounds like it is absolutely perfect. You press the breaker for the toilet doesn't flush, kind of thing. This sounds great.
Not breakers yet. They're later this year.
They're later this year, but they're coming.
Yes,
they're coming.
they are.
You heard it here, folks. You can hold them to account. The breakers are coming.
Some circuit breakers. Not all of them.
But the question is then, is this aircraft still accessible for someone who's, they've messed around with, some of the basic, generic aircraft, but they want to take that next step. They want to take the plunge into something more realistic. Is this an aircraft that they are going to be able to access?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually was speaking to someone at our booth about this, who was saying, I'm an Airbus and a Boeing pilot, don't really know if I'd like the MD. The MD, I would say, is a weird amalgamation of both Airbus and Boeing. There's so many different elements. You've got the auto-tuning from Airbus with their recent aircraft, but you've also got the Boeing-like elements of, that big yoke that you've got to really swivel around.
Hands-on feel.
Yeah, you've got that hands-on feel. So it's a really weird mix of both. But, I, as an Airbus A320 flyer myself, I felt right at home from the get-go. It wasn't anything to really learn extra.
I would say for somebody maybe coming from GA or corporate who's just not as well versed yet on commercial aviation, the MD-11 is kind of unique in that most of it's a lights-out cockpit. You hit the auto mode, and to start it up, if I remember correctly, it's 4 button pushes. You can go from cold and dark to engines running. Battery, emergency power, APU, air, engine starter. Yep. So, and then fuel, so 6. Six interactions, you can go from cold and dark to engine on. And that's how the real plane was. So it's kind of a unique plane in that if you want to go into manual mode and touch every button and get super nitty gritty with, this pack is running more pressure than that pack, you can.
Yep.
But if you're a little newer to airliners, I would say it's probably a good place to start. The complexity is going to definitely be in the autopilot and the FMC. There is a learning curve there. There is with any commercial airliner. Mm-hmm. Now, we do have a lot of great content on YouTube from our collector's edition. We're also working on our own documentation. There's a lot that you can learn about it. But I would say as far as flying the plane, getting it in the air, probably one of the easier airliners to operate.
That's always reassuring to hear, because I know and many of my viewers will know that I often talk about how flight simulation needs to be an accessible hobby. So it's really great that not only have you taken the time to model every intricate detail about the aircraft, but also acknowledging that, hey, it is an accessible aircraft, but with caveats that, as you said, there are, FMCs and stuff like that, which are the absolute bane of my existence. I loathe, hate, and detest them.
You're going to have to be reading on those.
Yes, I know. But also saying that, as you said, that you are making resources available to the community. And that's something that, will be available, obviously, in the documentation and on your YouTube channel.
Our YouTube and as well, we share a lot of things. We'll be working with a lot of media partners to create content.
Fantastic.
That they'll be creating, we'll reshare and make sure.
Yep.
The way I see it, a good product that's not properly explained is not it's not a good product. It's not usable.
So I guess that also leads me to another question, because if you've ever seen my reviews, one of the things I always hit on, especially because it's a Microsoft Flight Simulator product, do you make use of the in-sim checklists?
No. Not yet. So not yet. And the reason for that, and I'm sure there'll be all kinds of fun comments for this, but because we made it for both P3D and MSFS, when we first started this back in 2020, beginning of 2020, P3D was still the market leader. Yep. The SDK was basically infantile in MSFS. It was not at all where it was now.
Spoiler alert, folks, it hasn't changed.
It's slightly more.
It's usable. It is usable now, but it was so early on then that we couldn't even 100% commit to saying, yes, we're going to make this for MSFS back in the beginning. So because of that, we made the promises for P3D, and then we had to keep them.
Yeah.
So that has given us some limitations that we maybe can overcome in the future, or especially with future products. Yeah. But something like that, like the in-sim checklist, was just not an option until MSFS. Okay. And the tech stack that we built for this plane didn't support it because it didn't even know it existed when we made it.
Fair.
So some of those things I think are great features, and I look forward to using at some point in the future, but not immediately, not right now.
But it is on the roadmap for a potential future update?
I never say never.
Never say never. Okay.
Never say never. I'm not going to commit because I don't know the workload that goes into it, and it may or may not be me that does that. I'm not going to sign somebody up for that without talking to them first. Yep. So I don't want to make a promise we can't keep. But I think it's a great system, and like I said about the documentation, it does help a lot. At a bare minimum, we will have our own checklist and everything, but we'll do our best.
Oh, sounds good. So with the weight being, the 50-pound weight being released from your back now of knowing there's a release date and you're comfortable with the product, what else are we going to be able to see from IVNX? Like, what are we going to see for the future? What other shining examples of sim future are we going to see from you guys in the future?
I think, we have something coming up that we can't quite talk about just yet, but...
Damn it, I was hoping for the exclusive.
I can't. I would love to, but I think they'd kill me if I said it. So, but as far as the future for us, we of course have we want to continue polishing the MD-11, and I know that the people that are here for that will be excited to hear that, but also we have PAX and we have Smart Cars that are both... Now, PAX is getting a little older. Now we have Smart Cars 3 that just came out within the last year or so that is different than it's ever been. And we're looking forward to expanding that finally and helping it realize the vision that we've had for it and embrace its full potential.
So with Smart Cars, now, it's been many years since I've flown for a VA. Yeah. But is that something that's only still being used by VAs? Or
no.
Is this...
No, that's as of the last, I think it was 6 months or so.
Yeah, 6 months we've been working on Smart Cars Pro, which is the continuation essentially of what Smart Cars Premium used to be. Okay. One of the big features that we added was actually being able to fly on your own without a VA and doing the flights you want to do at any time with any aircraft you want. So we have an aircraft creator that you can go in, type in your details, and from there you create your flight like you would with a virtual airline. It's the same experience, same application, but it's all yours to control and fly whatever routes people want to fly.
Okay, so giving giving ownership of our sim back to ourselves kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
In many ways.
Because, people love VAs, and we still happen to work with the VA. Smart Cars community is still a thing. We still, work with them to be able to distribute that to their pilots free of charge, to the pilot, at least on the VA. But also, there's flights that you're going to do that won't be for your VA. I've recently started to really enjoy general aviation, corporate aviation, but I still like having my flights backed up. I like knowing that if my power fails mid-flight, I can just continue when I get back. Smart Cars does all this. I like now, coming soon with Smart Cars Mobile, I'll be able to use that to control my radios. I'm on VATSIM. I can have my phone sitting right there.
So you can have your phone sitting there and actually use that as your
That's a radio panel now. Yeah.
Nice.
So we got that coming. We got soon airline schedules coming to Pro as well. So if you fly for Delta Airlines, let's say, or Delta Virtual, you're not going to be able to do a Southwest route. That this may not be in their system.
So does that mean
that flight to count?
So will that mean that I can finally get that achievement in Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is like follow the real life flight plan?
I would think so.
Because I can actually go right. That's the flight I want to do. So I'm just going to use that. That's it.
You can pull it. It's got the data that we pull from. I believe it's FlightAware.
Yep.
And it's literally you can even see sometimes what terminal you should be departing from, and you're going from Terminal 4 at Heathrow to wherever you want to go.
Nice.
You use your one-click sim brief planning. The idea is to make Smart Cars into your kind of personal toolbox, personal logbook. I think it's something that I use it on pretty much every flight now.
Yeah.
And our goal with every feature is to minimize the amount of clicks you need. So I think we counted yesterday, 3 or 4 clicks to go from close to in-flight?
4.
4. Yep. Yeah, the idea is you forget about it, minimize it, and then you're protected, your flight's backed up, you got all those announcements, everything you need.
And that accessibility and integration sounds like an absolutely great thing, so that's good. And of course with the PAX, PAX, so we're going to see some updates for that coming along. I know it's getting a bit long in the tooth, but what are we seeing for that? What are we going to? What's the future of that product coming out for this one?
So we promised updates for PAX, and we still want to do that.
Yep.
But I'll just be honest, the position that we're in, PAX achieved the goal that we had for it. It came at a time when there was no competitor, there was a huge gap in the market, and I feel that we filled that gap successfully. Now we've welcomed a lot of other like product into the industry. Some of them are things that we don't have, admittedly. There's been some really cool innovations. But I don't want to turn PAX into something that it's not. I don't want to bloat it. I don't want to lose the purpose of what it is. And the obvious point for us to expand is voice packs. But now with the advent of AI and it being so intrinsically linked to a lot of programs like this, we're going to be behind the curve working harder to do less with manual voice recording than a lot of the tools that AI already do.
That's an interesting perspective that I hadn't sort of thought, because of course, yesterday with all the product announcements, we saw, I think, 4 AI co-pilots, Yeah, there was 2 passenger announcements, and so it was like, okay, that's interesting of where that's going, and it did make me think of where PAX, because as you said, you were the first to market essentially. You were the first one that was commonly known and used for that kind of tool. So I was curious about where that was going to, how that was going to affect you and your plans for the future of it.
It's one of those things where, especially it not being a subscription, we did several years worth of updates to it, and there are still some things to fix, and we're not going to abandon the project by any means. And we'll keep it, make sure it's supported, and it's fresh. But I want to make sure that we do something that's right for the product, and not just add a feature to say we added a feature. And looking at what's on the market right now, I think there are times that our efforts may be best spent focusing on new, unique things we can bring to the market than fluffing up things that I feel have kind of already achieved what their goal was.
No, fair enough. Very well. All right. Well, fantastic. Look, thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. It is great to have an interview. Nice to have one without any unexpected guests walking across the camera this year. So, folks, don't forget to check out Evernex and their upcoming MD11. July 2nd. The relief is palpable on these two, on their faces when they finally got to announce the date. And look for other updates coming soon. Otherwise, folks, thanks very much for joining us. Take care. Safe skies to all, and see you on the next interview. Bye for now.